Hey everyone, Todd Bilaszewski here with Junk Car Medics, and I want to talk to you today about scrap car prices. Scrap car prices is the scrap value of a vehicle, meaning how much the vehicle is valued based on its metal content. So there's different ways a vehicle can be valued when it's a scrap car. You can either sell it for scrap, which means you're selling it for the value of its metal, or you could sell the whole junk car to like a junkyard or a junk car buyer like ourselves, and they're going to buy it for the value of its metal as well as any salvageable components the vehicle may have. Today, we're specifically going to go over the scrap car price and dive into that a little bit so you can be fully understand what the values are. So right now, average scrap car ranges from 145 to 100, or $682.50. So we come up with these numbers based on the scrap metal price for cars, which is currently ranges from 145 to $195 per ton across the United States. So just doing the math, right? A 1 ton vehicle valued at $145 per ton is $145. If it's $195 per ton, it's $195. So like a larger vehicle or a truck, 3.5 ton vehicle might fetch up to $682.50 if it's in one of the locations that has one of the higher scrap car prices per ton at the $195. So let's go through this real quick. So you see the range here, the price per ton, which you already talked about. We also break it down in a price per pound. The scrap car price is generally spoken about on a per ton basis because vehicles weigh, 1, 2 tons. A net ton is 2,000 pounds. So just makes the math a little bit simpler. So let's talk about the scrap value of a car. So, right, a car has scrap value. When you scrap a car, just because maybe it's at the end of its life doesn't mean there's no value into it. So like the weight and size make up they're a key component in determining the value. The metal content, how much steel, aluminum, and copper the vehicle has, where you're located, and the condition of the vehicle matter. If the vehicle is missing any of its major components, such as like the catalytic converter or engine, then it's going to weigh a little bit less than metal, which will decrease the cost down a little bit, right? So let's move on to currently what scrap cars are worth. So when we break it down at the $145 to $195 per ton value, you'll see here that mini and subcompact vehicles range from $145 to $267. These are like your Honda Fits and Toyota Yaris. The compact cars, like a Honda Civic, you might get upwards of close to $300. Mid-size cars, Honda Accords, Toyota Camrys. Now we're getting into a little bit larger, a little bit more heavy. So you're going to cross the $300 threshold usually on those. Full-size cars, we're looking at about 4,500 pounds. So looking range of about $326 to $439. Then you'll see the crossovers, SUVs. It goes up from there, right? As the vehicle gets heavier, the scrap car price is going to be more because it's going to have a more higher metal content. Now, I just want to state that these prices can vary greatly, right? Like depending on like the factors that we talked about above, your car could be worth a lot more if it has parts that are also in demand, and you might be better off selling it to a junk car buyer or a local junkyard, or selling those parts yourself than just getting the metal value of them, right? Like if you can resell a catalytic converter, you might get a couple $100 for it, whereas the metal value of it, that the scrap value might get $50 to $100 for it, right? So when we talk about the scrap car value, it's simply multiplying the weight by the current metal prices, right? So that's how we come up with the values to determine it, right? So we also give you a little example: 1.875 tons multiplied by $145 per ton, you're looking at $281.25. So let's move on now to talk about a little bit of the metals in a car, and that help make up the scrap car price, right? So some of the common metals: steel, found in the body panels, the frame, especially the structural part of the car, the aluminum, cast aluminum, copper wire gets a little bit more valuable. It's in the radiators, electronic systems, the wiring harnesses, brass that you can find in any valves, fittings, and so on, right? The lead, the zinc, and then the precious metals. These are what are really found in the catalytic converter. $222.18 per gram, right? So like a little bit of that can add up a bit. And these are why these are unfortunately so valuable to thieves to steal. Now, when we talk about some of the valuable components, like, so this is what these can be worth if you sell them yourself, versus parting them out. So like catalytic converter, you might get $250 for these. The engine, 200 to 500 bucks, the transmission, right, and so on. So these parts can have value if there is a potential buyer for them. Now, the one unfortunate thing is if your vehicle's old, most scrap and junkyards across the country are already going to have shelves of these parts, just waiting to be resold, and the demand for them just keeps shrinking year by year by year as we get further out from the actual model year of the vehicle, right? So they're starting to be a little bit less in demand the older the vehicle is. So selling them for the scrap value becomes a better option at times. So the market right now is pretty stable. We're in December. We're going into the new year where it's likely to pick up as the weather kind of turns. The construction kind of picks up across the country. This means there's more demand for the metal, so the prices kind of tend to rise a little bit after that. So we do expect it to pick up a little bit as we get into the future. Here we have a graph. We honestly haven't updated this in the last month and a half, but you see the average prices here is pretty on point with where we've been. They have risen across the board for the year. So we hope for that trend to continue as we get into 2025. So why do they fluctuate though? Like we kind of talked about it a little bit, the metal market, the supply and demand, any regional factors, right? But also the economy, the fuel costs go into it, right? The higher up the fuel goes, the more valuable metal is. They go hand in hand with each other. So there's that. And also let's talk about getting the best scrap car price, right? So best thing to do is shop around, get multiple quotes, right? Don't just take it to the first buyer. If you're able to have the knowledge to remove your valuable parts, sell off the catalytic converter, the engine, the rims to a local junkyard or scrapyard or on Craigslist if you're able to and have the time, you will get much, much more money than just selling it for the scrap metal value. Know your car's weight, right? Like don't get scammed into selling to a buyer that's going to tell you it weighs 1.5 ton when it really weighs 2. Also stay on top of the current metal prices, right? Know that, like, so you aren't getting scammed, and so that the buyer, whoever you're selling it to, is giving you the best price, right? And then obviously as for free towing, they're good. The demand for vehicles is pretty high for junk cars from buyers. So like if you can't find one that's offering free towing, move on to the next one, right? So here we're going to talk a little bit about the scrap value versus the junk car value, right? When you sell it for scrap, you're selling it for the metal. It's going to be recycled. It's going to be disposed of. When you're selling it as a junk car, you're selling it for the reusable parts, the completeness of the vehicle, and the salvage value of that vehicle, where items can be pulled, components can be pulled off the vehicle and resold for value, right? So now we kind of wrap up the page, really talking about some just common questions people ask. Car body worth and scrap, it's the same, basically 100 to 400 bucks, depending on the weight and current metal. That's when you hop on a scale at a metal recycling facility, they're going to kind of factor in the amount of plastic and materials that are not metal that your vehicle currently has, right? So, and again, the best time to scrap a car, we kind of talk about that. Spring, summer months, usually highest metal demand. Crushed cars, typically 120, 140 per ton in scrapyards. These are stripped of their components, right? So if it's missing valuable parts, the price goes down a little bit. And then, so if you're not sure where to start, get a quote from us, right? We'll value your car based on the scrap price currently, as well as factor in any valuable parts it may have and pay you additionally for those. Like if we can, the scrap value of your car is 200 bucks, but we know we can resell the engine and a couple of the doors, we're going to give you a little bit more for that, right? So shop around, get a quote from us, and get the best scrap car price for your vehicle today. Good luck. Happy shopping.